Good evening, everyone. Welcome to July's open mic night. We're so excited this evening to be joined by Emily Rosso Lucas with University of Maryland. She's in the Agricultural Nutrient Management Program, and she's going to chat with you guys tonight a little bit about the requirements and other things to keep in mind for your nutrient management program that at some point, all of you are going to have to file because you are going to hit that financial threshold. So anyway, I really appreciate Emily's time today. She's going to give a little bit of a presentation, and we'll share the link with you guys after tonight's open mic night, as well as any resources. And then we'll have some time after her presentation for questions. So I am going to go ahead and spotlight you, Emily, and you can take it away.
Thank you very much. Very nice to hear a little bit about everyone. Let me go ahead and get my screen up. Oops. Am I sharing? Do you guys see my presentation? Just checking.
We do. And not your notes, because I know sometimes that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I always do. Oh, thank you. Okay. So I guess I'll just, introduce myself. I'm going to introduce our program, the Agricultural Nutrient Management Program. I'm a nutrient management communications specialist for the University of Maryland Agricultural Nutrient Management Program. We are funded by the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and we are the educational body. We're here to help you guys. We're here to help get your plans developed, to answer your questions, anything you need, questions in terms of nutrient management. The Maryland Department of Agriculture handles the enforcement side of things. So they're the ones you're turning all your documents into. But we're kind of just here to help. So I hope you'll learn a lot today. We're gonna start by talking about why does nutrient management exist in Maryland, really briefly. Who needs a nutrient management plan? What is a nutrient management plan? How do I get the information I need? And just how to follow up and some resources for you. So the first concept, I'm going to just start at the very beginning here, is just plants need nutrients to grow. You guys know this. There's a lot of nutrients that plants need. Our program is focused on really a few of them for the purpose that nitrogen and phosphorus, some of the main nutrients that plants need, are linked to water quality deterioration. So if you get a little too much nitrogen and phosphorus, it's coming off of your land and getting into the water, we're going to end up with some issues. Of course, all of these are important because plants can't grow without them. But again, these are kind of N, P, and K are our focus here: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So how are nutrients applied? A lot of you apply in all different ways, from commercial fertilizer that you may purchase. A lot of you are growing in really awesome, more organic kind of methods where you're using manure, you're using compost tea we've come across, or commercial products that you may buy in a bag, like Leaf Grow, or some of the mined kind of, phosphorus products, or granular kind of mined products that you might buy in a bag. Some minor contributions of nutrients are going to get into your soil through atmospheric deposition. Like, actually, we used to get a lot of sulfur for plants when our air was dirtier, but now that we've passed the Clean Air Act and kind of cleaned up the air, we're not getting as much atmospheric deposition of sulfur. So something you may actually end up needing to add. And there's some release from your soil minerals and the organic matter in your soil. But again, if you guys are really growing and want to get a maximum amount of vegetables and food from your land, you're going to end up applying these other nutrients. One really important detail is that if you are applying these organic sources, they are often not perfectly balanced for plant needs. Now, they have a lot of benefits in the fact that when you apply them, they have some of those micronutrients already built in, like manure and compost has a lot of extras, and that's great. But if you apply enough of that to meet your plant's nitrogen requirement, you are almost undoubtedly over applying your phosphorus and probably potassium too. And remember, when you over apply phosphorus, you end up with the risk of losing it into the water. So that's just one thing to consider. But there are ways to work with it, and we're here to help with that. The whole way this puzzle fits together is as we apply nutrients, many nutrients are carried through water. And so understanding the hydrologic cycle is kind of the groundwork for this. So, some of us may be out, in more spread out areas, applying the nutrients here. Some of us may be, in more urban areas, applying nutrients here. But either way, we're all connected to this hydrologic cycle together. You've got the rain coming in, we have some infiltration of the water coming through, recharging the groundwater. And you may not even realize these aquifers and the groundwater are connected even underneath of lakes to different rivers. We are very well connected with the water. So what we do on our land impacts drinking water. Sometimes here on, I'm on the west side of the bay, some of our groundwater is connected even on the opposite side of the bay, if you go deep enough. So we have just to think a lot about that. Urban agriculture may actually have some unique pathways to surface water that we don't think about. If your farm happens to be located near some storm drains, sometimes there's streams with very little buffer. They've got kind of cement walls, lots of impervious surfaces, sidewalks and streets and things that the nutrients will just wash right off of. So that's just one way that we can think about it as you're looking at where the water flows from your operation. Now, some folks at the university have actually noticed have been researching ways to kind of build almost natural filters around their storm drains to kind of catch some of those nutrients and head them off before they get into the water. So there's some really creative ways to go about that. And then even now you'll see in some of the newer parking lots and things that they're building, they build in bioretention ponds, they're called, or, some type of a drainage area where they kind of go and sit and have the water has time to percolate through and be naturally filtered before it kind of rushes off into the waterways. So there's a couple types of nutrient pollution. Point source and non-point source are kind of the main categories. So for a point source, it's easily identified, controls straightforward pretty much because it's end of pipe. You can, detect exactly where it's coming from. You might think of these as wastewater treatment plants. A lot of times confined animal feeding operations are considered a point source because you can really, the nutrients are in such a condensed area, or even a drain pipe. And you can kind of monitor the nutrients coming from those. Non-point sources or diffuse sources kind of are when the nutrients go over the landscape from various land uses, usually during and after rainfall. And this is kind of when we think of our cropland or pasture, our big gardens. And in towns and cities, this is kind of that impervious surface area where it kind of washes off and it's hard to track down and pinpoint the exact location of where it's coming from. So here's an extreme example of a non-point source, but it's, this garden's built right onto the riverbed. So you could imagine that any of the nutrients on this land could flow right into that river and cause some issues. Now that's not from around here, but just kind of an example. All right, I'm sure you've all seen some water that look like the picture on the right, and this is what we're trying to avoid. It's called eutrophication, and it's when you get basically a healthy environment would have this exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide a little bit, but there's plenty of oxygen in the water and the CO2 can leave. But in this case, you get so many nutrients coming in. You get these harmful algae blooms. The algae sucks up all the nutrients, grows like crazy, and then it dies. And as it dies and it's decomposing, it sucks all the oxygen out of the water. And you get these anoxic zones, areas without oxygen or minimal oxygen. And so any of these creatures here that need oxygen and the respiration process to survive are, you know, out of luck. They're going to die, especially like shellfish and things like that can't move. They're stuck where they are. Fish can sometimes leave those zones, but you do see big fish kills happening and things like that. And sometimes we'll have, you know, a mile wide dead zone in the Chesapeake Bay every year. So this is a real issue that we're still dealing with in the Chesapeake Bay. Agricultural sources are just one source, but they are a big source. So let's see. Is there a question in the chat? Let me take a look. My chat's not coming up.
I think you're okay. Ron was just, you know, agreeing with you that yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, let me know if any questions come up. Feel free to chime in. Yeah, and I'll keep plugging along here, but feel free to interrupt if something piques your interest and you have a question. Okay, so here's a little history. Prior to 1998, nutrient management planning in Maryland was voluntary. Farmers could participate if they wanted to. It looked good for them, you know, it was a nice thing for them to do. But in 1998, the Maryland legislature enacted the Water Quality Improvement Act. This was in response to a huge Pfiesteria outbreak, it's called. It was like a toxic algal bloom that caused huge fish kills and many problems in the Chesapeake Bay. So this kind of pushed the legislators to get moving on this and make it mandatory. So as that result, the Water Quality Improvement Act requires agricultural producers meeting specific criteria to follow a nutrient management plan in Maryland. And that brings us to who needs a nutrient management plan. So as a part of that requirement, the rules are that if you have an annual gross income, now this isn't factoring in your expenses or anything like that. If you make over $2,500 a year from agricultural products, you need a nutrient management plan. Or if you have a live animal weight of 8,000 pounds or more, so 8 horses, you know, or cows or whatever, about 1,000 pounds each. So that would put you over the limit. So it's an or kind of thing though. So I put this little image of cut flowers here, and I know some of you are growing cut flowers because I've seen a lot of operations off of very little acreage get over that goal easily, especially like cut flower operations, because you can grow them on small acreage, make a lot of excellent flower arrangements and things like that, and do pretty well. The good news is getting a nutrient management plan done is not a huge deal. I mean, it's definitely easy to do, and we're here to help make it as accessible as possible. And we work with all kinds of different scenarios. So we're happy to help with any of those specialty questions or anything like that. So who can write a nutrient management plan? So you either could use a certified nutrient management consultant. So there are private consultants available, or our program actually has consultants covering every county through the extension offices as well. So you have options there. If you're interested and want to be really active in this process and learn more, you can actually become certified to write your own plan. So we host these farmer training and certification courses, and I have a email listserv, and I announce when we offer those. And I also have an interest form that I can send you the link for. So if you are interested in learning to write your own nutrient management plan, let me know and we will get you that information. So what is the plan? So here's the actual definition is like, it's a formal document that balances crop nutrient needs with nutrients that are applied in the form of commercial fertilizer, animal manure, or biosolids. And it goes on to include other organic nutrient sources. But the main point is it's a document that balances the crop nutrient needs with the nutrients that are applied. So we're applying just the right amount of nutrients that you're not losing out on yield, and you're also not applying too much to harm the water quality. It contains a map. It contains soil test results and what they mean. It includes analyses of your organic amendments like manure, compost, etc. Yield goals, estimates of residual nitrogen. So if you applied manure or you grew a crop that's a legume, that means it fixes nitrogen from the air and becomes available later on. And we get field by field recommendations. And it also includes some regulatory documents and guidance. So what information do you need to get started? You need a map, and we can help you make a map if you are uncomfortable with how to make it on your own. You just need to know where, if we bring it up, where your fields are and the field boundaries and things like that. Your tax IDs, we can also help you look those up. That's your property tax ID. Soil tests you'll need to get, and I'll go into that a little bit. You need manure or compost or other organic analyses. Not in every case. In some cases, we can use a book value. If it's a product that has a label on it, we can often use that label. So it's, we'll have to check on which, depending on what you're applying, and we have seen all kinds of things. So just let me know, we've probably seen it. We can help you figure that out. You'll need to know what crops are planned and your yield records. Sometimes we've come up with, there's a lot of specialty kind of crops, and we may not have an exact recommendation for those, but we have specialists that we work with to help us find the closest possible thing to that to give you an accurate nutrient recommendation. We'll need to know about any animals you're raising on your farm. And if you have perennial fruits like orchard crops, tree fruits or things like that, you'll need to get a tissue test. So those are the main pieces. If you have really high phosphorus fields, by the way, we may need a little more information just to handle that, but I'm not going to go into that here, but just as a little note. So the next thing I want to get into is how you make a map. And how do you determine management units? So this little example here is kind of a large farm scale map where we would, some of the information you would see are the field names, the acres in the field. You see streams outlined here. This is just one of our research and education centers in Howard County. But that's kind of the example of the big map. Urban farm maps are often going to look a little different in small scale farms, and I'll show you that on the next page. The main thing you need to think about is what are the areas that you treat differently, because they're going to have to be different management units. What crop rotations are you doing? How do you fertilize the different areas? And what are the soil characteristics in those areas? So this is another example of actually in Upper Marlboro, the research center there, and the Turp farm, where it's like, well, they're growing in all these hoop houses and stuff like that. A map like I showed you on the previous slide isn't going to look that great. It's not going to tell us a lot. So you might need to do something like have one map that shows kind of the general location. And then you might just need to hand draw or create a little picture, in paint or something like I did here, just to kind of show where things are, label them in a way that it still has the same kind of information. This is hoop house 1, it's 0.05 acres, or you could even do 1,000 square feet, some measurement of the area. And okay, this is the drive to Largo Road, here's the parking lot. If MDA looks at your plan, they're going to be able to figure out where everything is that's there. So you might have to kind of do a dual thing. More about management units here is, let's pretend these are each a raised bed. And I'm trying to decide how to group these when I do my soil samples, because every management unit needs its own soil sample. And if it's pure compost, we have to do a little bit of a different sample, and we can talk about that too. But anyway, so right now we might group, if I'm raising, these are all mixed vegetables, and we rotate the vegetables around. One is not always one particular type of vegetable. So this is pure compost that we're growing in. This is compost amended soil. So it's mostly soil, but we added a little compost to it. Okay, so maybe we could lump all these together and then lump these together and do that way. But say we have some differences in where we got our compost. It's a different source. Let's just say it's totally different, kind of like one's like a food compost and one's like a manure compost. So then we look, okay, we can actually lump together and soil sample together the compost from Bob here, 1, 2, and 3. and the compost from Jane here. And then we can still keep these together. So it would look something like this. These might be your management units in this case, because we're trying to just keep it as consistent as possible, right? You guys have so many different things growing. If you really wanted to sample every little area that's managed perfectly different, you'd have hundreds of samples. That's just not practical. So to help you guys, meet the requirements, still get something useful out of it, we're just kind of trying to combine things in a way that makes sense and gives you a useful result. So we can talk about this for your unique situation separately. If you have particular questions, we're here to help. So you can make the map with a bunch of different types of methods. You could use like a free online aerial imagery like Google Maps or something. You can annotate it in Paint or a similar program. On our website, if you want to get really fancy with your maps, we have QGIS software, it's called, that we have all these how-to guides. But the main things are you want to include the field boundaries, each field name, acreage, surface water, nearby roads, your address, and your tax ID. So include those things on your map. And that is how you're going to sample your soils for the nutrient management plan, is according to your fields on your map. So how do we get soil tests? You're going to sample by each management unit, as I said. Oftentimes your local extension office will have soil probes that you can borrow. You don't need a soil probe. You can use a spade or something like that. But the main thing is you want to make sure you're getting an even core from the top to the bottom. You don't want it to be like this, where you're getting a bunch from the top and a little bit at the bottom. You want an even core, 8 inches deep. You want to do about 15 or 20 cores per each management unit. So you'll go around and get them, mix them together in a bucket, and you'll take a small sample of that. You want it to be unbiased. You don't want to get a wet spot or an area where you get a lot of traffic and it's compacted. You want it to be kind of representative of your growing area. And like I said, taking those 15 or 20 cores is really important, because you imagine in your garden, say an animal came through and left something there, and you happen to just sample that one spot where they went, it's not going to give you an accurate result. You're going to think, wow, I have lots of nutrients in my soil, I don't need to add that much. And it's really not correct. Also, that keeping it the same depth, about 8 inches deep, is really important, because if you go too deep, it's going to look like you don't have that many nutrients, because you're getting into your subsoil, you're getting below where the roots go. And oftentimes if you sample too shallow, especially if you're no-till farming, it makes it look like you have a lot more nutrients available than you actually do. So keep it consistent, really measure the 8 inches deep, and keep it unbiased. You want to lay that out to air dry, and then you want to send to the lab. And one thing to make note of is you want to make sure it's a compatible lab. We just require one particular, well, there's a couple methods that we accept. So I have a whole lab comparison sheet that I can have Kim send to you all. And it's available on our website, just so you know. You're not required to use those labs, but we do have a few methods that are, you're required to use one of those methods. So if you use one from the sheets, you'll know for sure that they'll work. So here's an example of a garden. Just imagine all these yellow spots would be places where you would take a soil core. So you'd go kind of in between the rows, kind of in between the plants, all around, kind of in an unbiased way to cover your whole garden area. Every time you take a core, you're going to put it in a bucket until you take all of them, put them all in the bucket, mix it really, really well, break up all the clumps. Take about a cup of soil out, put it in a baggie. Well, first you'll dry it, take a cup, put it in a baggie, and send it to the lab. And there's more directions about that on the lab forms. What about manure or organic tests? Same kind of concept about being unbiased. You want to take at least 10 or 15 subsamples. If it is a pile of something that's been sitting there, you don't want to include the very surface of it, because that's going to be different, right? That's been exposed to surface conditions. the nutrients there aren't going to be representative of your whole pile. So you kind of just want to go all around the pile, getting different depths, and then from the top, you're going to see different areas. Don't air dry that. You want to bag it up in something stable, Ziploc, double Ziploc bag it or something like that, and send it to the lab. This is the same kind of thing for a liquid source, except it doesn't look, obviously the sampling is not like a pile, but if you're doing a liquid source, you're going to want to kind of agitate it and then go in a bunch of different areas. If you have tons of buckets of compost tea, for example, go into all the different buckets, get a little sample, shake things up, make it as close to what it's going to be like when you apply it as possible. Either way, whether it's liquid or solid, the things you need from the lab are the total nitrogen, ammonium nitrogen, total phosphorus, total potassium, and the percent moisture. So how do we turn this information into a nutrient management plan? So the one thing to really consider is you need to make sure your plan's complete before you apply nutrients. Once you're over that threshold of making 2,500 a year, don't worry if you've messed up and you're already making that much. Like, MDA is not going to come give you a fine for, they are always happy to help people get on board who just weren't aware. But anyway, really your plan needs to be complete before you're applying nutrients. So you can find a University of Maryland advisor, one of our advisors, on our website. I did a nice little shortened website here. go.umd.edu/ANMP for Ag Nutrient Management Program. Right on our homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see these cards here. And if you click Agricultural Nutrient Management Advisors, you can find one of our advisors in whichever county you're looking for. We do have some interim coverage here and there at the moment, but someone will be able to help you with your plan. MDA's website, which I list at the end here, also has a list of private consultants. And again, you can become certified to write your nutrient management plan, sign up for our course. We are offering it in person and online. We built a whole online course now to try and make it more accessible because a lot of people had trouble taking off work. Many farmers are, have full-time jobs in addition to farming, which is itself a full-time job. So, we wanted to make it accessible for people. So we have an online course and we have an in-person course because a lot of people like coming in and having that person-to-person interaction. So we're hoping again this fall to be able to offer that in person. But anyway, if you go online and fill out this interest form, I'll know you're interested in doing it. And we've already got, a number of people signed up that are interested. So the more people that sign up, the quicker that I'm like, we're likely to go ahead and launch the next version of that online course at least. But basically in that class, I will go into a lot more depth, background about what's in the plan, why it's in there, how you figure all this stuff out. There's a lot of calculations and things like that. We'll go through our software that we use to write the plans. And we'll go through all the components that you need to study for the exam, which is administered by MDA, but we are the ones that will prepare you for that exam. And at the end of that class, we'll actually sit down with you and guide you through the development of your own nutrient management plan to get you started. And then oftentimes it's just little updates from there. So how does it work when you use one of our advisors? Private consultants are all different, but I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys know how it works with our program. So basically, you'll look at the advisor for your county. You call the number or shoot an email to the email address that's there. If you don't get a response for some reason, you can even email me and I'll connect you with somebody. There's no cost for the development of the plan with our program. It's completely free. The only cost is for the sample analyses, your soil samples or manure analysis that you would get separately, but we can also guide you through that process. You basically bring them all the information I talked about. They can help you with maps and looking up tax IDs and stuff like that if you're not comfortable with that. The advisor will tell you how long it'll take once you give them all the information. And then you want to just get this process started as soon as possible. If you're already sitting here now and you know what you want to do next year, depending on, if you're trying to apply compost or something, we may not be able to get started this soon. But if you're planning to buy products or something to apply for your nutrient sources, we could even start now for next year. So something to think about in the fall or winter, to get in early, and that way your plan will be done on time. When you go to pick up your plan, and they can do this digitally or in person, the advisor is going to review the plan with you at plan delivery and make sure it all makes sense. Questions are always welcome. We try to be as approachable as possible and just help you guys through the process. Because especially in the, I worked in Anne Arundel County for a number of years and also helped write plans in Baltimore City. And, we encounter a lot of really unique operations that don't fit perfectly into the mold of nutrient management. And we have all kinds of ways to kind of make that work in an improved way. We work very much hand in hand with MDA and make sure they're okay with the way we're kind of incorporating these things. So yeah, it's not going to be super straightforward, and we're always available for questions. So there's some follow-up that happens. You basically have to update your plan when some of the critical components expire. Organic nutrient sources, that analysis expires annually, unless it's like a purchase thing with a label of the analysis. But the longest a plan is going to go is for 3 years, because that's how often you need to do your soil tests. They expire after 3 years. Or if your practices change between what was written in your plan and what you're going to do in the following year. So if you decide to get a bunch more animals or plant a different crop than what's in there, you might need a little update. So other things you might need to do are calibrate your spreaders if you're using like a manure spreader, get some tissue tests, make sure you're keeping your yield records, and filing your receipts and recording your nutrient applications. And we have little forms and things to help you with all of that. Some of the required reporting that Kim kind of briefly talked about at the beginning. When you make your first nutrient management plan, you'll need to fill out the new client reporting form that gets your operation in MDA system. And then once you're in their system, every year they'll send you, usually it comes out right after the first of the year, and it's due by March. The annual implementation report, it's called. And they basically just want to find out about what you did in the previous year. And that's to meet our overall goals for improving water quality in this state. This can be done online. And like I said, it documents what you actually did in the previous year. Because one thing is that a nutrient management plan will tell you the maximum amount of nutrients that you can apply. That doesn't mean you have to apply that many nutrients. And in fact, many times people don't apply anywhere near what they're allowed to apply in their plan. And that's fine. So MDA wants to know what you actually ended up putting out in the fields. You also might need the current nutrient management plan certification form. And if you use a consultant, they'll fill that out. Oops, that got cut off here. It should say should be completed by nutrient management consultant. I'm not sure what happened there. Unless you're doing your plan yourself, and then you can just fill it out. But you need that to qualify for many programs. Like if you're working with Soil Conservation District or want to get cost share on something, you may need this form filled out for that. Record keeping is key. There are a lot of great resources out there for how to keep records. I actually attended a talk not long ago specifically for kind of urban farms and vegetable, really high producing vegetable farms about how to keep great records. They're making apps for it, so that may be an option. I like to keep things in Excel spreadsheets just because I can make my columns and track things and I can sort it, and that's how my mind works. I also like to keep handwritten notes sometimes, but they're a lot harder to go through to pull back the information. But whatever is your style, as long as you keep your records somewhere about what nutrients you applied, you can keep it in a big binder of pages, but just make sure you can pull those records back when you need them. Some resources about this stuff can be found on our website. There's a ton of stuff there. You can find an advisor. You can look through our plan rating handbook to kind of give you an idea of all the components that are in our nutrient management plan. How to soil or manure sample is there, lab comparisons, how to make maps. There's software downloads and tutorials. And then there's MDA's website there as well. And they have a lot of information there. And I should have put the link up to get on my the listserv where I send out our different trainings and talks and things like that. But that's another option too. So, well, it's 8 o'clock. I think I'll stop there and let me know if you have any questions.
I definitely have a question. I am, like I said at the beginning of the call, I'm in search of a nutrient management plan for mushroom production. Just to kind of describe to you how this is a little bit outside of the scope, but we're going to be growing them in our warehouse in tents in bags. So it's a substrate, which is oak and soy hull. There's no soil. We're not applying any nutrients. There's no water runoff. There's it's only really being misted for humidity.
Yes.
So, and I've contacted the extension. I talked to Christopher Dowell. He said that you guys only do soil-based.
We do in-ground and on-ground in the sense of like you're on raised beds, but it's got to be connected basically to the ground. So what you're doing is actually out of ground production, and it's I assume it's a permanent structure, right?
Yeah, it's our warehouse in Beltsville.
Yeah, so you're gonna need to, let me see if I can, you're gonna need to end up using a private consultant, or I think you can become certified yourself as well. They have trainings for that. Let me see if I can pull up MDA's page about that.
Yeah, I do have the list of consultants. I reached out to a handful of them, and they were all sort of stumped as to how they would approach it, and so that they could potentially work with somebody at MDA. So I reached back out to MDA, and I haven't heard anything from them. But I do want to get certified, but I also need to get this addressed in the short term as well.
Yes, because you need it for another program, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
FSA is giving us some time because they understand it's not an overnight process. They're going to give us some time to get the plan together, but we need to find the right person and get it going ASAP.
Okay. Yeah. So have you haven't been able to get through to MDA yet?
I reached out to them and they gave me the list of consultants, but then I went back to them and said, I haven't found a fit. Who do you recommend? And I haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay, let me write down your information or shoot me a direct email. Let me put my email in the chat. I don't know why my chat's, oh, there it is. I was like, where is my chat? Okay, let me put my email in here. Because I know the folks that do the trainings, I'm gonna try and find out for you when the next training is, because it is handled separately. I actually took that training. In my current position, yes, and Ron, or no, that's not me. Somebody else was doing, Larry's doing aquaponics. So that's the kind of plan you would need to know about as well.
Right.
So aquaponics, anything out of ground containers, you guys will either need, and I honestly, like I said, I took the training, and in my current position, it's a conflict of interest for me. I want to just help you and write the plan for you, but I can't do it. Yeah, so there's private consultants that can do it. But I know they're slim pickings. So, sometimes it doesn't seem like there are that many that actually know how to do that or regularly doing that. So I'm going to try and find some connections for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll send you an email.
Thank you. And Ron, was that, do you want information about the out of ground stuff?
No.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
You're the one that has the 38 acres. I was taking notes on everybody, so.
Yes. I took the intensive class a couple of years ago that when Kim and them hosted it in Riverdale, and I took the nutrient management course. The wife took it. I think we just need to take it again. So I would love to be on that list that you have.
Yeah.
So I have PG soil conservation coming this week, so we can walk the site. I'm thinking that after I hear from Mr. Hamid and Mr. Darcy about a plan of action, because I know the previous conservation plan that they had, so I know that some trees are going to need to be remediated. So I wanted to work with someone at the University of Maryland's like forestry program, but I also wanted to go ahead, like you said earlier, plan this year for next year, because I mean I got seed, but I'm not going to be able to use it this year because we just moved onto the property in July 1, middle of the season pretty much. So right now it's just site preparation, making sure like all the regulatory stuff are in order, that we talk and meet with the right folks. We have a bunch of certificates like poultry management, poultry slaughtering. We have the FSMA back, I think the hybrid about 4 years ago that they did. We have the produce safety. But here's my thing. I'm also a waterman. I'm licensed for crabs, as well as a hook line license for Blue Cats Unlimited. Oh. So I usually dock at the end on the lower shore of Somerset County, because we have property there, and we have it listed on our farm and trap because we keep our crab pots and our fishing equipment there as well. Because it's right there at Apole Creek. And funny that you mentioned the algae bloom test, because that's where the whole algae outbreak happened back in 93, 97, because of the chicken houses that were voluminous out there at the time. So we bought property out there. So, we fish out there because of the natural resource, and the water is actually better because of us oystering out there as well. However, I said that to say, I will then take the fish, the crabs, the oysters that we harvest from those waters, put it in a refrigerated truck, and transport it back to our farm in Prince George's County. So I'm licensed, I'm seafood HACCP certified by you guys, as well as AFDO, Maryland Department of Health, shell stock shipping. So I got all those certifications. I needed to incorporate all that into the nutrient management plan, because I know at some point I heard that there was an outbreak down in Southern Maryland where there was a deer hunter who was catching venison deer to eat. He kept the oysters and the deer in the same cooler, and it started, I believe, a listeria outbreak. So I'm trying to, it was big at some point. And Maryland Department of Health, they just been on us, they use that as a reoccurring example to kind of make sure that if we're going to do a diversified something, make sure that we have separate refrigeration. So I wanted to make sure that like we have all that out. So question being, after we meet with PG Soil Conservation, do we then send an email to you saying we need help crafting that nutrient management plan?
So we're probably so you can do it, before or after, whenever you want to get started. Actually, somebody mentioned if you're, let's see, where were you? You're down in Prince George's County too, right?
Yeah, I'm on Clegg and Landon Road.
Yeah. So you could call if you want to just have somebody go ahead and develop your first plan for you. I think Chris Dowell down there in our office should be able to do it. You'll find his info right on our page.
I'll actually start it because I still have the materials from the class. And then forward it to him. That way, it'll be less work for him to kind of do.
You don't actually, and sometimes they still have to go through everything anyway. So to save yourself time, you might want to go through so you can provide him all the information you need. But, you can actually go right here. Chris Dowell is here. So it's CSDOWELL at umd.edu. So he's the Prince George's County consultant for us, and he can get you started. And then if you want to sign up and be able to do your own plan and kind of have that control to just update it whenever you want, not have to be waiting on someone. Sounds like you know how these certifications work and you've been through all this stuff. So you probably have a pretty easy time of it. And, let me know, or I have you here that you're interested. I have your email written down, so I'll send you the form to fill out. And then we'll let you know as soon as we have another class open. You can sign up for that.
Yeah. I'll definitely sign up.
Yeah. But in terms of like, we don't do for our program, unless you're applying, we actually have a lot of people who apply like the waste or residual from like processing shellfish on their land.
So I was going to use that. So like the crab shells, we were going to use as compost, some of the oyster shells as compost. But we was going to use some of the oyster shells and grind them up as a mineral for the chickens, because we wanted to have pasture. So we wanted to have a few livestock, not as many, but like 2 cows, 2 goats, maybe about 50 Rhode Island laying hens.
I love those. That's what we always had growing up.
But we would sort of kind of build that sort of, I guess, keep it all like sustainable or within,
so if you're putting all these different materials into your compost, because I assume what you're going to do too is when you clean out your chicken houses, you're going to put that in.
Yep.
You're going to have a really unique blend of materials in your compost. So you'll just want to, there's some, compost trainings and things you can get into, but really do a good job working that compost. And really the important thing is to get a good sample of it, so you kind of know the nutrient value in there, and you'll know what's there, you'll know how much you're putting on your plants, and you'll know what they still need. If you're trying to grow purely organically, what you'll often have to do is add an organic source that's pretty much pure nitrogen, like blood meal, for example, or something like that, on top to kind of bump up the nitrogen so you don't over apply your phosphorus. But let's see what your soil tests look like first, because if they're really low, you may want to build up your phosphorus a little bit.
Okay.
And so you can apply up to a nitrogen-based rate. So you can apply up to your plant's nitrogen needs, which will over apply your phosphorus a little bit, but you can build your soils up if the phosphorus is low. Now, a lot of places down in Prince George's County have historically high phosphorus from the tobacco industry. So you may end up with high phosphorus soils, and we can help you work through that too. So.
And the crops that I grow could reduce that or mitigate that, right?
It takes a really long time, but if you are removing material without adding, though I'll tell you, some of my master's research was on fields that had been built up with manure phosphorus, and they harvested corn and soybeans and hay off of that for 20 years. And some of those fields still had plenty of phosphorus to grow the crops. So it depends. I mean, it can take a long time just because of the way phosphorus is stored in different pools in the soil. So
now I know a lot of farms over where we have property on the Eastern Shore in Somerset County, they have free manure, or the MDA has free manure that they can transport.
Mm-hmm.
With that, well, that depends on me getting the test, because the question I was going to ask, would that help or hurt the soil in on my property on Clag Landing? But we got to get the test to see first.
Yeah, find out where especially really your phosphorus level in the soil is. If you could use extra phosphorus, then it's great. Especially the one thing you want to check is that, make sure you know your source, especially if you're growing some, food for eating fresh. You want to make sure you know kind of where it's coming from and what kind of things they do. Do they give their animals like a lot of supplements, or, medicine, whatever? Are they planting herbicides out on the fields that may persist in the manure? Just know your source. Generally, poultry litter is very safe and a good nutrient source for the plants. But you may want to also refresh on your, food safety stuff. Just make sure you're applying plenty ahead of when you would be harvesting and following all those protocols.
That's what I asked Deanna Baldwin and Dr. Farelli at Extension as well. I think she taught us the updated gap maybe about a month or two ago. But yeah, she was saying that the manure in the program is pretty much safe and we wouldn't have to worry about that. So that's what I was thinking as adding the extra nutrient or, into the compost and working that in. Because we did want to sell compost or do compost because we got a lot of trees. So we said we might as well just not, just cut down the trees and take them. Let's just shred some of them and use it, start making compost to see what we can, make off of that.
Yeah. Good. I'm excited to see your operation kind of grow. That's really great.
Great questions, Ron. Does anyone else have any questions for Emily or anything that they've attempted? Oh, I hear somebody.
Kevin Williams, how you doing?
Oh, hey, Mr. Williams.
Hi.
Maryland National Park and Planning has a program. If you plant trees, they'll give you a tax credit.
Huh.
Also, Prince George's rainwater rebate. Chesapeake Bay Foundation has some aquaculture programs, as well as PRAVA programs. And the biggest thing, if you're in PG County, PG County Economic Council will give you a loan up to $20,000. And Maryland Business Casino Investment Fund will give you up to $50,000 in loans, 2% cap. And if somebody can send me an email at KEVDREV of the Crabber guy, I would definitely appreciate it.
Kim, sorry.
Yeah, I could send Kevin your email, no problem.
Okay, because I'm new.
Not a problem.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club.
Hey, Jamila, did I hear you?
Yeah, I have a super basic question, but I'm not ashamed to ask it.
Good.
You mentioned earlier that you have a list of labs that we can send our soil sample to. I've used AgroLab in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, and I understand if you cannot direct me to a lab, but can you recommend a lab that will talk to me like a kindergartner? Like, I just want, like, I don't want to have to think at all. Like, I just want my results, and then I want the lab to tell me exactly what to do. Which one would you recommend?
Yeah, they all give you different outputs. Like, AgroLab they have a couple different forms of outputs that they can give you. Some have nice charts on them. So I'm not sure which one they sent you, if it was just the straight numbers or if they gave you the pretty graph. Because if you ask them for the pretty graph, they'll give it to you. But if you ever get soil samples and you just want to know what it means, you can just email them to me and I'll tell you. I'll walk you through it, or because any of the labs, they kind of just have these common outputs and they're not used to explaining them to people as much. But some of the university labs, I would say, might be a little more detailed. University of Delaware, they're a little slower than AgroLab, but they give you a really nice, graph. And if you put in what crops you're going, they'll show you some of that stuff. One thing to remember, if you are above that threshold for the income for nutrient management, you actually can't follow the recommendations they give you on the lab sheets. You actually have to use Maryland's recommendations. So sometimes they line up pretty close. Sometimes the labs will have a bit of a higher recommendation and you're actually not allowed to apply that high. So that's the danger thing that you don't want to end up having. You want to make sure you're applying according to your nutrient management plan. But again, if you ever have a question about soil analysis, send them over. One of us at the nutrient management program can kind of tell you about what that means for your soil, even if you're not above the threshold for income.
So you feel like all the labs are good, and if we get stumped, we can send it over. send it.
Exactly, they are. And then some of them, like I was saying, like Penn State and
That's what I did. Sorry. That's what I did,
yeah.
Jamila. I did. I sent it to AgriLab out at Salisbury. I went to the Southern States in Queen Anne's, and they specialize in like soybeans and corn. But like you, they gave me that same chart where it was like scientific. I sent it to the advisor. I forgot her name, Kim, and Kim probably remember. I think her name was Dr. Trisha.
Dr.
Steinhill.
Steinhilber, yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Trish. She was my previous boss before, yeah.
Oh man, she broke it down like as a baby, and
Yeah, exactly. Talk to me like a baby.
yeah, and so she and then she redirected me to the resources that we had in the nutrient management manual, because they give us like this one thick binder and then they give you 4 other binders. But I would definitely, because it's cheaper and it's quicker, because I paid like $7. And then I sent it over, and then they gave me the analysis. And I'm right down the street from you, Kim. You could connect us if you want. So I'm there to help, or we could collaborate.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So just like Trish did for him, and I'm gonna tell her that because that'll make her day. She loves educating people, so that was like her favorite thing, and is to teach people about this stuff if somebody's interested. So.
Real deal. Kim brought her over about a couple years when we first started. I think it was like 2014, 2015. She was the real deal. She broke it down.
That's
it was
awesome.
worth $20. I think it was like $25, Kim. It was worth it.
Yeah, it was inexpensive, and it was worth the price of admission for sure.
Yeah. 4 days, good knowledge, practical people, food.
That's awesome. Well, good. Jamila, just send me an email with your soil results and I'll talk through it.
Emily, Stephanie had a question in terms of buffers. I know in Prince George's County, you have to be about 10 feet. Your operation needs to be about 10 feet from any property lines in the street. And I know, technically people could probably grow in that space if they were, because it's a public right of way oftentimes. But in terms of, runoff, if you have compost and fertilizer in that area, in Baltimore, did you guys have any recommendations on specific setbacks or things that may be planted or grass buffer strips?
So are you talking about within Baltimore City or Baltimore County? Well, let me first say
Either.
Nutrient management standpoint, just agricultural nutrient management, any direct nutrient applications have to be 10 feet from surface water. Any broadcast methods, so if you've got, a spreader that's, broadcasting manure or something like that, you've got to be 35 feet from surface water. With our program, we don't talk about proximity to roads or anything like that. It's mainly about distance to surface water. So you'd probably have to check with somebody within the county if there's a nutrient application, and then, your manure storage similarly has to be set back a good deal from surface water. But yeah, that's kind of what we deal with is distance to water.
So this is Stephanie speaking. So specifically for us, like so the waterway is like, I don't know how that, like, how does that relate to like distance to road? Like, is there just like no consideration, like because we're definitely far from rivers. We're in an urban area. Like there's no river near me.
Well, it's any surface waters, if there's a stream or a lake or anything, but you're right in Berwyn Heights, right?
Yeah, we're like near College Park. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the area. Yeah, so I think that would have to be kind of a local requirement as to like, I'm not sure about property lines or roads or anything like that in terms of nutrient storage. Yeah, I think that may kind of be more of a local rule.
So there isn't a rule against that from a nutrient management plan standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest, just because again, the impervious surface thing, like, if your nutrients are close to the road or the sidewalk, they're just going to run right off and into the storm drains. You're dealing with more of a storm drain situation, which, oftentimes that can go right into surface water, depending on, of course, Berwyn Heights, I think of more neighborhood, but I'm not sure like your specific property. But I would still try to keep it at least 10 feet or further from any kind of like impervious surface that would run off into, into somewhere. And again, you may run into issues. I'm not 100% sure about what kind of problems you might run into. If your neighbors complain, if you have a big pile of compost, if it's not, compost really shouldn't be very smelly, but if it happens to have an odor and somebody complains, you might end up with MDA over there, like making you get rid of it. So,
so sorry, I don't know a lot about like the physics of like water movement. So when you're talking about runoff, I'm thinking of like in a neighborhood where there's a street right there. We put down landscape fabric so that like physical debris doesn't actually go into the road. Like, is that what we're worried about? Like those physical, like
actually, yeah, so that's part of it. And oftentimes you'll lose some, some nutrients are stuck to the soil particles, but a lot of the nutrients, especially nitrogen and a lot of phosphorus, will just dissolve and it's clear. It's running in clear water. You can't see them, particularly nitrogen, like I said, is going to be, running clear in the water coming off of that pile. You won't see it. So that's where you run into issues, and you want to give yourself a little bit more ground for it to soak into, because the soil does a good job. Once the water kind of soaks into the soil, as long as your soil is not saturated with nutrients, the soil can kind of filter it out and hold on to it a little better if you've got grass growing and things like that. So you want to try to kind of capture that way and not let the water from the manure pile, even if it looks clear, run right into the water, into the street and the storm drain.
So would wetlands be a danger to a farm? Is that oversaturation from water coming from somewhere?
You can have, wetlands are actually a really great natural way to capture nutrients and kind of let it settle out. Wetlands are hugely beneficial in that way.
Really?
Yeah. Wetlands are, super useful. I mean, you still don't want to end up just like over enriching everything. If you can avoid it, as many nutrients as you can keep on your property, A, for you economically, that's a good thing. But B, for, environmental impact, you want to keep your nutrients on your property. But like I said, wetlands, they're a good natural place because everything kind of sits in there and settles out. It's not flowing water moving quickly, out to the bay. It's kind of settled in. So that's kind of a good natural way to catch nutrients. You can also build, like I said, they're called bioretention ponds. Actually, I think they were invented in Prince George's County. I learned that in one of my classes back in college. But it's basically a rain garden, right, is the kind of the more common term for it. And what that does is it catches your, any water running off and kind of allows it to sit there and settle out. And the nutrients can settle out and be filtered through the soil. So, that's going to be kind of another good option if you need somewhere to kind of channel your rainwater. And soil conservation can help you guys. If you have an area that you think would benefit from that, you can partner with your soil conservation district, and they can sometimes help you put those things into place. And cost share even sometimes. So
yeah, we can help with flagging, and I know the county's rain check rebate program offers quite a bit.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Emily?
Yeah, so I also had a question. So I haven't, I'm in the beginning stages, so I don't think I'm hopeful I'll reach the 2,500 mark. But, I'm trying to be realistic. But what I've done, where my property is, I have 2 neighbors and I'm on a ridge, and water, every time there's a heavy rain, water just gushes through my property. So I've created like a beaver dam on one side and like swales on the other, where I'm capturing some of this water and I'm planting like perennials in between the soils. Is there any way of getting in contact with you guys and seeing if these type of work I'm doing here makes sense for nutrient capturing or nutrient management?
I mean, from what you're describing, it sounds like a logical way to kind of help keep your soil on your property and help keep the water from flowing to your neighbors. Let's see, our program doesn't necessarily go out and assess that, do like those kind of assessments, but I'm not sure. I would have to see if soil conservation in your area would do that, because they definitely do a lot more of that assessment of like kind of those best management practices, so to speak, those things you can implement to kind of reduce that. But again, yeah, I'm trying to think who would be the best group to call. Also, if you're starting off on a small scale, I know somebody else here said they were a master gardener, and gardeners have a lot of knowledge as well about kind of growing this stuff and getting started in a really small scale. So the master gardeners at your local extension office could be a really good resource for that as well.
That was Miss Renee.
Yeah, Miss Renee. Yeah, that was really. The master gardeners are amazing and super helpful. They help me with a lot of my more ornamental kind of plant questions. As a soil scientist, if I'm trying to grow something ornamental every now and again, I get stumped. So they have a huge body of knowledge as well, and can help kind of with that type of thing.
And Armand, you've actually done a fantastic job with capturing a lot of the water and keeping the soil on your property and directing the soil onto your vegetative space. So I think you're actually doing a pretty darn good job with that.
He's doing all of the things that we advocate. And in terms of the follow-up, it's literally how would I say it? You encourage your neighbors if you can, and you get them to do something similar. So the water that you experience is mitigated by both of you having similar practices, if they're interested and or attuned to doing something like
that. Okay.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I have to actually check out. I don't want to stop you guys' conversation. Keep going. If you have any more questions for me, can please send my email, and I can send those other resources as well. Some of the things I talked about, and I can send my presentation as well.
That would be great, Emily, and I'll just forward it to the whole Google group if that's okay with you, and I'll send the link as well. So we want to absolutely thank you for your time tonight and for taking so much time to answer our questions. So thank you, and we appreciate you being available for follow-up.
Yeah,
and with
anything
that,
you guys need, soil sample, figuring out or anything like that, let me know.
Thanks so much, Emily. Have a great night.
Thanks everyone for your time. Bye.